guys, welcome back to the 12 days of foundation. Over 12 days I am testing 12 foundations on my oily skin. Today is day 5 and I will of course link to the days previous below. As always with my foundation reviews, I will have timestamps down below if you want to skip ahead to things like application, before and after, flash photo test. Today we are chatting about a foundation from Becca, which I have mentioned before. It is the Becca Ultimate Coverage Complexion Cream, so let's go ahead and get started. This foundation claims to be a super full coverage foundation but suitable for all skin types and have a natural finish. Retails for $44 American, $53 Canadian, and on the Sephora website it lists 20 different shades and the shades look to be quite fair to quite deep. But as always, if you have any experience with this foundation, be sure to let me know down below how you enjoyed it. I of course have lots of things to attest covering up today. I'm going to be wearing the shade Cafe today, but I've also worn the shade Bamboo. I will have more shades of foundations that I wear down below, but for reference I'm about an NC42, NC43 at MAC. So we're going to go ahead and put this on my face. I'm going to prime this half of my face just to see if that makes any difference in application or longevity, so let's get into it. So I'm going to start by dotting some of this on my face. And I'm using the Becca Perfecting brush, which I actually really like. I know it's dirty, I used it yesterday, but I really like this brush. It looks super gimmicky, but I actually find it does a good job. And this foundation also claims to be super weightless. It says it's 22% water and 21% pigment to give a nice balance, but it does also say to moisturize your skin and if you're priming to let it fully absorb. So that's something to keep in mind. It says with a well moisturized face, so if you have dry skin, definitely keep that in mind. I've also moisturized, but I use a more light moisturizer. So as you can see, with just a couple dots it did a really good job, and I'm going to keep building it up just to really show you the coverage. But you can go a little bit lighter, but it is quite a full coverage foundation. I find with this brush, I like to kind of like stipple it into my skin and then blend from there. But this is also not a first impression. I have worn this foundation many times, but I haven't really done like, you know, a full day wear test, really kind of monitoring how things are. But I have enjoyed it when I've worn it. And this brush can shed a little bit, so just be warned of that. I find this brush can shed a little bit, but nothing crazy. There's a ton of bristles in here anyways. And I have used this foundation with other brushes, other kind of dense brushes, and I do like it that way. So now you can really see how much more it has covered up that redness that was on my skin. So we have foundation versus no foundation. Now that I have let the foundation set on my skin for just a minute, it definitely is not completely matte. You can see there's a little bit of a sheen to my skin. It does claim to have a natural finish. So if you do have a more normal to dry skin type, you may prefer not to powder this, but I of course have very oily skin and will be powdering. I really do love the amount of coverage on this foundation. I think it's buildable, but there's definitely a ton of pigment in there. But of course, if you use less foundation, you will get slightly less coverage. I've used about 2 pumps on my face, 1 on each side, and built it up from there, and I really do love the way it looks on my skin. You do need to kind of work quickly or work in sections. Sometimes I find this foundation can get patchy, but if you're using a good dense brush and working quick enough, I mean, like, it's not a rush to get it on your face, but that is just something to keep in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the rest of my makeup and I will show you how it looks in flash photos. I have my full face on now, and everything that I'm wearing will of course be listed down below, and I actually have an eye tutorial and kind of a face tutorial that I've posted on Instagram, so I will link to those down below as well. But overall you can see that this is a very full coverage foundation. It doesn't feel really heavy on the skin. I wouldn't say that it feels like the most lightweight foundation, but it definitely does not feel cakey or look cakey on my skin. You can obviously tell that I'm wearing foundation, but it does look quite smooth on the skin as well, and I just find that I really love the way that this looks as a full coverage foundation without feeling like I'm wearing a complete mask. Primed versus unprimed looks about the same, and they seem to apply about the same as well. And as for the photo test, I thought that it looked really good, and this is no surprise here because I've taken lots of photos using this foundation, but here in my lighting I thought that the foundation looked really good. There's a little bit of a natural sheen to my skin. It looks quite flawless, but again, not heavy. And then for the flash photo test, and for both of these photos actually, I got a little bit ahead of myself, put on my Shape Tape, and then I was like, oh, right, the photo test. So I did take both of these photos with concealer, and you can see that there is some flashback when I turned off all of my lights and used the flash on my phone. So depending on how you use this foundation, I've said it 100 times over, but for me, having flashback is not the end of the world because I don't take many flash photos at night. So I'm gonna go ahead about my day. I will check back with you midday in some natural light. We're now about halfway through the day. I wanted to show you what this all looked like in natural light. And as you can see, I've had a little bit of oil peek through, but barely anything. My skin feels really good. It does not feel like there's oil trying to push through. If you have oily skin, you kind of know that feeling where it's like lurking. But it feels really comfortable on my skin. I don't feel like I need to blot or powder, which is amazing. That being said, I haven't had like a crazy busy day or anything like that, but I do find even some days where I'm just home working, I can get really, really oily. So it's not a matter of like me being out and about. Sometimes I find I get oilier at home, not doing much. I don't know if that makes any sense, but either way, things look really good. So I'm not gonna blot or powder, but I will check back with you at the end of the night. Here is my final face. I'm gonna do a little bit of blotting and powdering. As you can see, the oils have come through on my skin. My lights always make it look a little bit more oily than it actually is, but overall, no surprise here because I have worn this foundation multiple times. I am really happy with how this wore. It feels really good on my skin. I would absolutely continue to wear this for a few more hours. Of course, when you have oily skin, sometimes powdering is just kind of the way of the world. I have to do just about every single foundation, and I actually get better wear when I do powder or blot a little bit more throughout the day instead of letting the oils build up like I do in reviews. But overall, I'm looking for something that's going to feel comfortable on my skin, that doesn't slip around, that doesn't transfer a ton, and kind of withholds my oil a little bit longer than it would with something more dewy. So overall, I really love this foundation. I love the coverage. I love the finish. I love the way that it feels on my skin as well. It just feels really, really secure. So this is definitely a foundation that I've been reaching for in times where I really want to have that coverage, the kind of perfected look, and the longevity. So if you didn't already guess it, this is definitely one of my favorite foundations of the year. I really enjoy it. The only potential con to this foundation is that in application, it can't... My cat is using the litter box. Are you done? My cat is Siamese, so she is pretty loud. Anyways, like I was saying, in application, sometimes things can get a little bit patchy, so just note the brush that you're using, but I can definitely get a really beautiful finish. I haven't played around much with this using... Rue! Do you mind? She's now scratching her scratching post. I haven't played around with this much using my beauty blender. I haven't been reaching for a beauty blender much, mostly a brush. So if you have experience there, let me know. I think this could definitely work on normal to combination skin. And if you have a lot of texture in your skin, it's not a super dry finish, so I don't really feel like it's going to catch on dry patches. But of course, if you have dry skin or dry patches and have experienced this foundation, let us know down below how it went for you, or just any skin type. I'm always curious to hear how it goes for everybody. But overall, I highly recommend this foundation. I really, really love it. So stay tuned for tomorrow, day 6. We will continue on in our hunt for an amazing foundation for oily skin. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat at SamanthaJaneYT, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!